Very good morning to everyone. So today I'll be doing the analysis of the news dating 23rd of October. So we'll be doing multiple news, but this one I wanted to cover first. Why? Because they are talking about global wealth tax. So we should know that why is it that global wealth tax is being talked about. So it says that to curb evasion, EU report calls for 2% global wealth tax on billionaires. Now, it is important for you to know what is global wealth tax. So, what is the scenario? Um, since 1990, what is happening globally? That the richest 1% have captured 38% of wealth growth. What you see is that the richest 1% have nearly taken or nearly capturing 38% of wealth growth, and the reports have been suggesting what that around 10% of the richest, that means 10% of the richest in the world, have more than 60 to 80% of the wealth. That means they have some worth this much of wealth. Who 10% of the people are holding this much, that is at global level. So here also at global level and there also at global level. So what we find is that if you see 1% are holding 38% of the wealth growth, 10% of are holding close to 60 to 80% of the wealth. So what is happening? The poor half systematically owns less than 5% of the wealth. So if you see the poorest chunk, now the poorest chunk holds less than 5% of wealth. So see the numbers. Now what else the number says that the 50% of the people, that means the bottommost. The bottommost, if you see, the bottommost 50% of the people are holding what? They just own 2% of wealth. And they own 2% of wealth. And what else? They own 8% of income. And other than this, top 10% of the population owns 76% of wealth. So if you see, like from this scenario, you see what is there. There is a wide amount of social inequality, and this is happening what globally. So globally, we are having a huge amount of social inequality. Now, if you see, seeing this, what could be the solution? How are we going to, check this inequality and uplift the bottommost people? Because they are the one who require this privileges, so that they could get out of this inequalities circle. So there are certain solutions that have been talked about. Now, what are those? See, so in one of those solutions, there was a very famous economist. That was the name of the economist was Thomas Piketty. And what has this economist said? Now, they have suggested what there should be new form of wealth taxation, and this new form of wealth taxation should be on multimillionaires. Okay, and when this new form of taxation should be brought in, these multimillionaires, what should else be taken care of? So they said there should be a progressive wealth tax. Now, if you see what is the meaning of progressive wealth tax, they say that as much as your wealth increases, so shall your tax should. And that what means progressive wealth tax. Apart from this, what else they have said? Now they say that if you see the year round and in the passing years, you find that what has been happening is there is higher concentration of wealth. And what is happening is more wealth inequality is there, and a tax system so far in most countries in the world have not adapted to this. So this progressive wealth tax. So what they are saying is that if we are having these kind of taxes, that would help in checking the inequality. But the problem is there is a high concentration of wealth, and there is extreme wealth inequality also. But what is the scenario is that the tax system is unable to check it. Why? Because we have not adapted to the progressive wealth tax so much, so globally also. So they are saying that the tax system is unable to check it. And this is why we require global wealth tax. So from here onwards, you can say that the solution what was found was global wealth tax. First, let's see what is the news all about. Then I would discuss about the global attack. So, pointing out that the tax evasion is enabling billionaires to enjoy effective tax rates equivalent to 0 to 0.5% on their wealth. The European Union Tax Observatory, in its Global Tax Evasion Report 2024, has called for a global minimum tax on billionaires equal to 2% of their wealth. This would address both evasion and generate nearly $250 billion from less than 3,000 individuals. The report justified the proposal by noting that while the number of taxpayers affected by it would be minuscule, um, the tax rate for them, 2%, would still be very modest given that the wealth of the billionaires has grown at 7% a year annually on average since 1995. So what has happened is that the wealth has been increasing. This wealth has been increasing at how much rate? At 7%. And this has been increasing on an average year. That means annually 7%. So they say what that a tax rate of 2% would be modest to them. Now, assessing the impact of international efforts made so far to curb tax evasion. Now, if you see the entire article is actually talking about what? That the billionaires have managed to do what? Evade tax. And the wealth of the global millions have been increasing 7% annually. And they are, evading tax. That means they are paying close to 0 to 0.5% of tax in their wealth, on their wealth. So altogether, what is happening is when they are evading tax, that means this is the amount of tax that they are paying. So what is happening is that they are enjoying, and the tax evasion loophole loopholes are still lying. So what is the article saying is that the report highlighted the success of one measure, the automatic exchange of bank information in reducing offshore tax evasion by a factor of 3 over the past 10 years. The report observed that before this measure came into effect, households own the equivalent 10% of the world's GDP in financial wealth in tax havens, globally the bulk of which was undeclared to tax authorities and belonged to high net worth individuals. Now, what are the two reasons? But today, there is still the equivalent of 10% of world GDP in offshore household financial wealth, but only 25% of its evade taxation. This reduction in non-compliance is a major success that shows that rapid progress can be made against tax evasion if there is political will to do so. The report stated that despite this progress, offshore tax evasion countries and the report identifies two reasons for it. First, what is the first reason? First, it is still possible to own financial assets that escape being reported on because not all offshore financial institutions comply with the requirement of automatic exchange of bank information for fear of losing their customer base. That means, banks are not disclosing what the customer's information. Why so? Owing to the fear of losing customer base. First, it is still possible to own financial assets that escape being reported on because not all offshore financial institutions comply with the requirement of automatic exchange of wealth for fear of losing the customer base while facing no real threat or penalty from foreign tax authorities for non-compliance. Now, what is the second one? Wealthy individuals who used to hide financial assets in offshore banks have started shifting their holdings to asset classes not covered under this agreement. So, what is happening is that the wealthy individuals, that means all those people who are owning the high amount of wealth, who used to hide financial assets in offshore banks, have started shifting their holding to asset classes not covered under this agreement. That means, especially real estate. See, what is happening is that initially what they used to do is that they used to evade tax through how? Through offshore banking. That means they used to invest, or you can say they used to shift their financial wealth onto where? To offshore banks, and have now started shifting their holdings to asset classes not covered under the agreement. So now what they have started doing is, initially what they were doing is that they were shifting all their finance to offshore banks. And then what has happened? From now onwards, what they have started doing is that they have started shifting from offshore banks. Now they have started shifting their wealth. Instead of offshore banks, they have started shifting their wealth or their assets to systems which are not covered in the agreement. And what are those? So they have started shifting their holdings to systems like real estate sector. Now, the report therefore calls for expanding the range of assets brought under the system of automatic exchange of information. Now, what are the several loopholes? The other major measures, the global minimum tax of 15% on MNCs adopted in 2012 by 140 countries and territories has been a disappointment one. Why? Because it was expected to increase global tax revenue by 10%. A growing list of loopholes had reduced expected revenues by a factor of 2. That means the report red flagged the trend of greenwashing the global minimum tax, where an MNC can use green tax credits for low carbon transition to reduce their tax rate base below the minimum of 15%. That means what they are saying is that the reports have flagged the trend of greenwashing the global minimum tax. That means by the use of this green tax system, that means again this was brought for bringing climate justice system, but then the MNCs have been using this green tax for evasion of tax. Now, when they are going for this, that means tax evasion is happening. Uh, they are doing what? Now, they are able to reduce their tax rates way below minimum of 15%. So, they are able to reduce their tax by minimum of 15%. Now, US green energy tax credits will amount to the equivalent of about 15% of US corporate tax. The reports also flags emerging forms of aggressive tax competition that are severely affecting government revenues. So, what has the report suggested? That the report also flags the emerging form of aggressive tax competition. That means severely affecting the government revenue. That means the government expected, the global government was to have an increase in. Just a minute. Okay, so what was the expectation of global government? To have a increase in revenue. Now, when they have increase in revenue, what is happening is that this is global government was expecting to increase the revenue, but however, the aggressive tax regime, aggressive tax regime has affected the government revenues. Okay, it notes with concern the rise of preferential tax regimes targeting wealthy foreign individuals, their number having grown from 5 to 28 in the EU and the UK. So, what they are saying is that there's a preferential tax regime and which only targets the wealthy individuals. So, when these are targeting the wealthy foreign individuals, their numbers have grown from 5 to 28. So, if you see what they have opted for is a preferential tax regime. And what is preferential tax regime? Under this, they are targeting the wealthy individuals. Fine. Now, noting that these regimes offer tax exemptions or reduction to incoming residents while preserving the general income tax schedule applied to domestic tax. Where the report details the harm they caused, pointing out that they weaken the overall tax collection. Why? Because the adopting governments voluntarily forego tax revenue and because they inflict negative spillover effects to other countries. Now, what they are saying is that these kind of regimes are doing what instead of increasing the tax or the increasing the government revenue coming from these taxes, what is happening? There is a reduction that is being seen while preserving the general income tax schedule applied to the domestic taxpayers. So the report detailed the harm they cause, pointing out that they weaken the overall tax collection. Now, a little bit detail about the global tax, that why there was need of global tax. So you have also have just done it, that the need for the global tax was firstly that this shall include the total amount of wealth uh, of the government, or you can say there will be increase in the revenue. But what happened was that the top point or top 1% of the population, since they are holding more than 50% of the income, and they were trying to evade the tax. So this kind of tax is going to. It was thought that this kind of the tax will help in reducing the income inequalities. Okay, so I think this was important to be covered, so I covered it first. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, the dwindling storage in the Karnataka's Kaveri Basin Reservoir owing to drought prevailing in the state has caused concern in the downstream areas, besides typically escalating the legal tussle over interstate sharing of the river water. So but the plight of the sensitive ecosystem of Kodagu, which is the main catchment area as well as place of origin of the river, is yet to get due attention. So this tiny hill district located in the pristine Western Ghat region should receive good rains if the Krishna Raj Sagar reservoir located in the downstream has to get adequate inflow to take irrigation requirement of farmers in command areas and drinking water needs of towns, cities in the basin, including Bangalore. Now, what is the rainfall water pattern? This year, Kodagu district has reported a cumulative rainfall deficit of 42% during the southwest monsoon that ended on September 30, as against the state's average deficit of 25%. Now, they are talking about the rainfall deficiency. In fact, the deficit was as high as 80% in June and 82% in August. This deficit would not just impact the ecosystem of the district but the flow of river in the entire Kaveri basin that transcends state boundaries. While legal experts are worried about the dwindling storage in the KRS, that is your Krishna Rasagar dam. So naturalists well versed with Kodagu landscape are concerned about decline in the rain-fed paddy cultivation in Kodagu, which they saw is a micro reservoir system. So you should know about the micro reservoir system here that sustains the ecosystem of Kodagu and the Kaveri River. So this micro reservoir system is helping in sustaining the ecosystem of Kodagu and Kaveri River. We have an age-old practice of cultivating paddy in the valley with the help of rainwater. These paddy fields act like small ponds as we impound rainwater in them for 3 to 4 months. These paddy fields will feed streams and rivulets, which in turn strengthen tributaries of Kaveri. But the cause of concern now is that cultivation of paddy has reduced by nearly 50%. The scientist and the respective dean of the College of Forestry in the region, who had studied the ecosystem of Kodagu for over 35 years. So, according to him, what has the person or what has the principal, what have the scientists talked about? According to him, farmers are shunning paddy mainly because it is not remunerative. The high labor cost and man-animal conflict near the Nagar World National Park are also forcing them to shun paddy cultivation. Another major reason for shunning the paddy cultivation is rapid commercialization, which is making farmers who either sell off or take up construction activities on paddy field. Now, expressing concern that shunning paddy cultivation is affecting particularly the summer flow of the Kaveri River as well as the Kodagu ecosystem. He suggests that the government revives rain-fed paddy cultivation by providing an incentive of rupees 10,000 an acre. The government NGOs, corporates should join hands in this endeavor, he suggests. If the government wants continued flow of Kaveri even during summer, then the need of the hour is to demonstrate sustainable development model involving paddy cultivation, and this shall be backed by incentive in a couple of villages so that others too would get attracted. Now, what else? Former member of Coffee Board of India and an expert on coffee industry as well as Kodagu ecosystem has expressed concerns over rapid commercialization that is affecting the ecosystem in sensitive zones of Kodagu. People from outside invest in land here for commercial purposes. This has resulted in huge concentration coming up on ecological sensitive areas. We saw its impact in 2019 when landslides in Kodagu when it rained 40 inches in a single day. It is okay to allow conversion of agricultural land for construction for residential purposes. But conversion of agricultural land for large constructions like big resorts should not be allowed. It is not wise to allow such huge constructions atop the. Now, what is the Kodagu unit president talking about? So, Kodagu being a tourist destination, outsiders show a lot of interest in buying land here for commercial purposes. So, politicians too are buying lands here in others' name. That is the Benami ownership. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, now this again becomes a very important article because we have got the judgment from the Supreme Court regarding the LGBTQ community or the same-sex marriage. Now this shall hold relevance. Okay, so let's do this article with a deeper analysis. Okay, so the court's no fundamental right to marry is wrong. So the author of the article, that is Mr. Anand Grover, a senior advocate practicing in Supreme Court of India, has appeared in the NAS Foundation. So Suresh Kumar Kaushal, Puttaswamy, Nalsa, Navtesh Singh Grover, and Supriya Chakrabarti of the LGBTQI community case. Now he says that the court's no fundamental right to marry is wrong, and now let's see what he has talked about, or according to him, what shall be the relevant thing, and what is his say on this article, or what is say on the judgment of the Supreme Court. Okay, so we have it from the Supreme Court of India in Supriyo Chakrabarti that there is no fundamental right to marry it quotes. On that account, the court decided that the same-sex persons cannot marry. So, what has Supreme Court said? Now, Supreme Court has given its decision based on Supriyo Chakrabarti that there is no fundamental right to marry quotes. On that account, the court decided that same-sex person cannot marry. In my view, this is a wrong decision. However, to the credit of the court, it directed unanimously that the same-sex couples have to be protected from any harassment. That means the court has directed that the same-sex couples should be protected from any harassment. The court also passed direction to sensitize the authorities on this behalf, and even directed the setting up of a committee to look into a number of issues. That means the though court has not legalize same-sex marriage, but what they have said is that the same-sex couple shall be saved from all kind of atrocities. However, the flaw is fundamental, which needs to be corrected sooner than later. So, to understand what was the Sukhdev Chakraborty's judgment, to understand the Sukhdev Chakraborty, we need to contextualize it. In 2009, the Delhi High Court read down Section 377 of IPC in NAS Foundation that was set aside in Suresh Kumar Kaushal by Supreme Court in 2013, but ultimately upheld NAS in Navtesh Singh Dohar in 2018. Section 377, that is 377 of IPC, a law made by the British that criminalized the sex between the non-heterosexual couple, was punishable with 10-year imprisonment. That means your IPC 377, this was brought by the British, and when this was brought, they said what? This criminalized sex between non-heterosexual couples was punishable with was punishable with 10 years imprisonment. Fine. So, what else the author is saying? As a result, the LGBTQ community suffered blackmail, torture, violence, harassment at the hands of the police, their lovers, and families. A gay man, for instance, could not disclose his orientation for the fear of reprisals. This is what I heard from clients who began coming to the lawyers' collective room from 1997, when we took the decision to challenge the constitutional validity of Section 377. Now, what happened then? Both Naz and Navtej Zohar did not strike down Section 377. They held that adult non-heterosexual couples having physical relations with consent in private would not be criminalized. In the meantime, even before Navtej Zohar, the court had held in Khalsa judgment that persons are entitled to identify their own gender. That means, under Nalsa judgment, what they have said is they can identify their own gender. They may be born as males, but if they want to identify as females or transgender, they are entitled to do so. Pursuant to that, the Transgender Persons Protection of Right Act was passed by Parliament, which provides the procedure for changing one's gender and protection against discrimination in diverse establishments. Stigmatization. So it has also been held by the court in diverse decision that in India, especially now the court has said that in India, a person is entitled to autonomy, dignity, privacy, and the right to choose their own partner to live with or in marriage. Obviously, after Navta is over, when one can have intimate relations with a person of any gender or sexual orientation, it is logical to assume that in that situation, when a couple are having physical relations, they may prefer to develop a long term relationship, including that of marriage. So, for marriage brings along with it host of advantages for the couple, including succession in the field of inheritance, adoption of children, taking decision in case of hospitalization, and benefits from the employer. So now, what they are saying that when a person is married, this brings a host of things. And what is that? Like what are those advantages? For example, the author is talking about that it all talks about succession, and this shall start with inheritance of property, or you can say inheritance rights. The next one they've said adoption of children. Now all this comes with marriage. So inheritance right, adoption of children. Um, Other than this, they said decisions regarding hospitalization, etc. Fine, and benefits from employers. So other than this, it is benefits from employers. Now these are certain rights that these are certain you can say advantages or what the person said is yeah advantages to the or advantages of the married couples. More than anything else, in the eyes of the society, it sanctifies a relation beyond approach. A relationship less than marriage is not considered by society to have the same legitimacy. That means the author is saying that any relation which is less than a marriage is not considered by society to have the same legitimacy. Without that legitimacy, LGBTQI communities are stigmatized. Consequently, LGBTQI communities began making strong demands for their rights to marry. So, the author is saying that in a society there is no relation getting respect less than marriage. So, if marriage is there, they get that kind of respect. So, that is the reason why LGBTQI community were talking about marriage. Um, Petitions were filed in the Delhi and the Kerala High Courts, which were all transferred to the Supreme Court for two fresh petitions. It is in this background that the court in Supriyo Chakrabarti was asked to decide the right of recognition to marriage by the state of non-heterosexual couples. Now, the Human Rights Declaration, the fundamental court decision of Supreme Court in Supriyo Chakrabarti is that there is no fundamental right to marry in India. In arriving at this decision, Supreme Court ignored the fact that India was an original signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the founding document of all human rights in the world. It is well known that the Indian Constitution was greatly influenced by UDHR, that is your Universal Declaration of Human Rights, by as a signatory country to UDHR, legislation by the Parliament and state legislature in India must be in accord with UDHR, that is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. More importantly, courts in India have interpreted the constitution and statutes in line with the UDHR and other international codes. So India is a signatory to UDHR. What is UDHR? Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 16 of UDHR 1948 provides that men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion have the right to marry and to found a family. Under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the right to marry is a human right. In the face of this, can it be argued that it is not a fundamental right? Critics would argue that the Indian Constitution does not provide for the right to marry explicitly. That means the critics would argue what? That the Constitution of India is not providing for the right to marry explicitly. However, this ignores the Indian constitutional jurisprudence where the court have interpreted constitutional provisions and enunciated new prenumerable rights in a liberal and expansive manner. The Supreme Court of India has read the right to be treated with dignity into Article 21, classical negative covenant of the state. It is on this basis that positive rights, including rights to education, food, environment, have been ignored. The Supreme Court has used the provisions of Universal Declaration of Human Rights to elaborate rights under the Constitution. Thus, in context of handcuffing and consequential torture, contrary to Article 21 of the Constitution, in Prem Shankar Shukla, the Supreme Court referred to Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stating that after all, even while discussing the relevant statutory and constitutional requirements, Court and Council must never forget the core principle found in Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Act. So they are talking about the Article 5 of the UDHR. Now, this was reiterated in Francis Coralia Mullen case, which, based on the concept of dignity, stated it would thus be seen that there is implicit in Article 21 the right to protection against torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, which is enunciated in Article 5 of UDHR. In Menka Gandhi, the Supreme Court relied on Article 10 of the UDHR to read in principles of natural justice into administrative process to state. Hark back to Article 10 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights to realize that human rights have but a verbal hollow if the protective armor of body altered part is deleted. Thus, it was eminently reasonable to develop the concept of right to marry. Just a minute. Now they are saying that it was evidently reasonable to develop the concept of right to marry into Article 19 and 21, especially because the right to intimate relations is now recognized in Supriyo Chakrabarti itself. Surprisingly, the code says that we cannot use foreign jurisprudence in the case of legal issues relating to marriage. Despite the fact that in Supriyo Chakrabarti the court has introduced the doctrine of intimate association borrowed from the jurisprudence that is developed in US. Now, what has the also talked about? in conclusion aspect. So on transgender person, the irony is that for transgender person, the court holds that marriage between a trans man and a cis woman or between a trans woman and a cis man is illegal. That is correct. But there lies irony. It needs to be appreciated that according to the logic of the judgment, marriage is only legal between a man and woman. That is biological man and woman. The court has rightly made the leap from biological sex to gender, which is self-identified in accordance with the NASA. So what else they are saying? If the leap was possible for biological sex to self-identified gender, it is difficult to understand why a leap could not be made from biological sex to sexual orientation. That means the two statements. One is your biological sex to what self-identified gender, and the second one is biological sex to sexual orientation. After all, not recognizing marriage for same-sex couple is not only discriminatory against them, the unintended consequences of the judgment in the larger society is that the notion that same-sex couples are not fit for marriage will be perpetuated. So, what is the author saying? That if you are going for, no marriage for. So, what kind of idea is going to perpetuate? So, they are saying that when you are not allowing this, so you are trying to say what same sex couples are not fit for marriage either. Okay, so this idea shall perpetuate. So the author is saying that if you are going for no same sex marriage, then this idea is going to perpetuate into the society. Okay, it now has the in premature of the highest court, it reduces them to the second class citizens. The sooner this wrong is set right, the better it would be for the society as a whole. The author is saying his message to the LGBTQ colleagues is that fighting involves falling several times before the ultimate victory. We fell after caution, but we fought and won in Navtej. Now we need to get up and fight and win again, which we shall do. So they got the thing in this in case. So the author is optimistic about the second attempt for the case. So indeed, it was a good article. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so coming to page number 8, we have this have earnings grown post pandemic. So if you see, this is a chart. Has there been an increase in income? So while wages and earnings have increased, inflation has also increased. If inflation is higher than the growth of earning, real earnings reduce. So what is the article about? That if inflation is higher than what the growth of earning, what is going to happen? Real earnings are going to reduce. That means what need to be done? That means your growth of earning should increase or keep. It should be. You can say growing at a regular interval because this is important. Right. So all the status here in the graph in the chart is all about what was the earning of in case of regular wage workers with respect to men and women in the rural section and with respect to men and women in the urban area and then collectively. Then what was the scenario of real earnings with respect to casual workers? What was the scenario of real earnings with respect to self-employment? And all of this are under your rural section, urban section, and then all of the areas. Then the next table again is talking about the rate of real earnings between April-June 2022 and April-June 2023. Now, this was about April-June 2022 relative to your April-June 2019, and this is with respect to April-June 2022 and April-June 2023. And again, the scenario is similar with respect to your regular wage workers, casual workers, and self-employment workers. So, here is all in all the analysis. Fine. Okay, and the data we need to remember what that the data is coming from periodic labor force survey. And this is talking about what strengthening of the labor market. Fine. Okay, and what has the just talked about? So there has been a rise in the proportion of women working as unpaid family helpers, with the share of rural working women in this form of employment rising from 37% to 43% between 2018-19 to 2022-23. Now, between 2019 and 2023, only casual workers, both men and women, across both rural and urban sectors saw a net increase in their average real monthly earnings. Now, wage workers as a whole have seen real earnings grow slower than output, indicating a reduction in the share of wages, even though growth remains healthy. So, a little bit just is required for your social justice section, for your economy section, your society section. Okay, so two experiments conducted by ISRO paved the way for Gaganyaan test mission. Now, there were two important forerunners to the success of TVD-1 flight, that is ISRO conducted. Now, during the test, an unmanned crew module was brought. The test and its forerunners are the ISRO's first major step towards launching humans to the orbit as a part of the Gaganyaan mission. Now, the TVD-1 test was carried out smoothly, especially given that the ISRO had to overcome a glitch of 5 seconds. Other than that, what they are talking about is that the ISRO chairman said it issued a hold when it detected a non-conformity for allowing the engine to continue thrusting to further go. This happened due to a monitoring anomaly in the system. He added we could identify very fast and correct it. The first forerunner to the TVD-1 mission was the ISRO's Space Capsule Recovery Experiment (SRE-1). Now, this shall be an orbiting satellite called SRE. SRE was brought back to Earth on January 22, 2007 after PSLV placed it in orbit 10. Now, they have similarly talked about what? That the decent maneuvers included sophisticated braking system, deceleration techniques, deployment of parachutes, etc. Other than that, SRE-1 was India's first big step towards sending the Indian astronaut in space and bringing them back safely. Now they have talked about the second forerunner. The second forerunner to DVD-1 mission happened here on December 2014 when LBM-3 placed the 3.75-ton unmanned cube module in suborbital altitude. The module nipped through the Earth's atmosphere and also survived to re-entry. So, what is altogether the TVD-1 also had three other highlights. And what are those? They were standalone liquid booster rocket launching for the first time from Indian soil. The successful performance of the crew escape system that pulled the crew module away from the launch vehicle. The crew module reoriented itself from landing in the base. So you just need to have a brief idea about this. That's it. Okay, so thank you so much. I shall see you tomorrow. Thank you.